Hey, whoa! Mental Ray is here. Mental Ray? I uh Hey Rushback 99. Hey Stream Elements. Uh I I grew up, there was a guy, his name was Ray, that was crazy. And this is a true story. This is the 70s, 80s, 70s. He was the kind of guy who would like he'd come to, I grew up on this farm, and so we'd have like bonfires and stuff. He would like run through the fire. Anyways, his nickname was Mental Ray because he was crazy. With Mental Ray. Well, we don't anymore. Not many of us do. We work with Arnold, and I didn't know anybody named Arnold. Sadly. Good morning or afternoon or wherever anybody is. It's 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here in Chico, California, Northern California, home of the Chico State Wildcats. You guys can see my screen okay? You can? Awesome. As usual, this is my 45th cup of coffee, and I'm just starting to wake up. All right. So, when last we met, it was a laugh riot. What did we animate last week? Last week we animated something. Oh, we transitioned a walk cycle or a treadmill walk to a walk across the screen, I believe. And then we talked about what we're going to do this week. And there was a couple things. One was, and we had 2 hours to kill, so there's lots we can do. One was we're going to play with Play-Doh. The other was somebody mentioned a quadruped walk cycle. And those are, I live without these notifications from Google Calendar. That's for sure. The other was I wanted to talk a bit about game animation attack cycles using the A to B pose philosophy. And Blizzard, I did a talk one time. What do they call it? A micro talk or something? Spark talk. I don't know. Anyway, but it was at the same time that Blizzard Studios was doing a talk on game animation attack cycles, and they used something called an ABC poses, which I thought was quite interesting. So maybe we start there. Maybe we start with the game stuff, and then we'll move on to the walk cycle, quadruped walk cycle. How does that sound? You guys with me? Woo! This is my favorite thing to make with Play-Doh. A worm. I'm all creative and stuff. Okay, so I'm going to use our man Herc here. Now, this rig is from the Body Mechanics Mega Pack. We did the quad walk last week. Did I do a quad walk last week? Damn, I gotta start taking notes. Thanks, Kirsty. Well, let's do the attack stuff. One hit wonder. You're a former student. Well, that's exciting. Well, thank you for showing up. Quad walk. Kirsty, are you sure? I was there. All right. So when we're talking about game animation attack cycles, we're talking about, again, 2 poses, an A pose and a B pose. Now, the interesting thing about video game attack cycles is that the A pose is the anticipation pose. A lot of us make the mistake of starting with a neutral pose and then going into the anticipation pose and taking way too much time into it. So we start in the anticipation pose, and that's the A pose. And the B pose is the strike, whatever the strike is, kick, punch, sword, swipe, and then back to the um, back to the A pose. The reason why we start with the anticipation pose, obviously, is just speed. We just need things to happen quickly. People are playing a video game. Things need to like snap into action, and or else, you know, we're gonna damage our thumbs. So I'm going to I'm going to do the unthinkable, and I'm going to work without reference. How do you like that? I'm just going to do very broad. Um, let's do a slap. Yeah. I'm gonna first things first. Just gonna set up my scene file here. I go over to my tab and I make sure I'm in the animation tab. So all my animation tab here. I go into my selection groups and I turn everything off except for nerves curves. And then I go to frame 1. I select my entire rig. Hit. I work in auto key, and I also work in, I go to my settings and preferences, animation. I work in auto, default in out tangents. I work with. I'm not going to block this out in steps because it is just 2 poses. Then there's only 4 frames between the poses. So we're going to start there. And then I'll show you the technique that I learned from the good people at Blizzard about C poses as well. Other things that I do in here, my evaluation mode, I'm going to set it to parallel. And all that means is that Maya can now access parallel cores of your drive. Kind of nerdy. Obviously, I don't really know what it does, but it just makes things faster. It also makes Maya a bit unstable at times, so you got to be careful with it. It'll make things look kind of weird. I'm going to animate over 24 frames, so I'm just going to set up a 24 frame timeline. There we are. Yeah, that seems fine. Okay. So my first things first is I'm going to set up my first pose, and it's going to be just a slap. But I want to really push this stuff because I'm animating. I'm not animating for a certain specific title, and I'm not working for anybody. I'm just animating for myself. I like to push my poses and push my animations as far as I possibly can. And the reason for that is when you're animating your own work, and a lot of you that are students, it's important to understand that your audience is other animators, because you're trying to get recognized and noticed, and you're trying to you're trying to develop some professional currency here. So your audience is other animators, and as we know about animators, is they love to see really nice animation. They love to see pushed poses and all that. So I'm going to start with the basic foundation principles of weed overlapping action. So what that means, of course, is that I'm just going to have a juxtaposition of pose that's in a reverse C shape. Then my strike pose is going to be C shape. And I just want to keep it super simple, and that's going to be the core of what I'm doing is this principle of overlapping action, weed principle, where I'm going from one C shape to the other C shape. So with that in mind, no further ado, let's start posing this thing. Get this foot back. Ultra Sanj, hey, how's it going? Lovely to see you. I feel like I should know who's who here, but I don't, because you use all these crazy names. I'm using FK arms. Remember FK arms, forward kinematics. The motion begins at the root, goes out, and it's characterized by rotations. IK is inverse, which means it starts at the inverse, which is wrist, and characterized by translations and then rotations as well, but just locally. I'm going to use FK because it's such a fast strike that I'm doing. I can knock the overlap out pretty quickly. I'm gonna give a twist. I'm also using, I think I'm using, yeah, I'm using an IK spine, which I prefer, not for everybody, but I like it. I love it. Shoulders up. Remember the clavicles. Don't neglect the clavicle. It's going to be a slap. Let's see, if you're getting ready to slap somebody, you want some tension. So I'm going to bring these fingers back a little bit. The index a little further. And then I'll just grab all these fingers. Over here in the channel box, I have a middle and last joint channel. So I'll just select those channels and go. Give that a tension. Thumb, same thing. Some of these rigs are, keep it, okay. A couple of things that I love about these rigs is I like the shape of them. I like how simple they are, but I also like, if you look at the character node here, they have all these visibility. Oop, play blasting. They have all these visibility channels here. But again, where you can turn things on and off. And of course, I love being able to turn the arms off, because then I can just concentrate on the movement of the torso. Very important. So top shelf stuff as far as I'm concerned. It'll be quite the slap. This hand, I'll just make a fist. Oops. Frame 24 all of a sudden, but that's okay. 24 and 1 are going to be exactly the same. One of the challenging things about this stuff is making sure that your character's path of action doesn't change. So I see a lot of these attacks where, and I've done it myself, where the character is back ready to attack. Hey, Matthew. And then when they attack, so they're facing this way, but when they actually do their strike, they end up facing an opposite direction. So one thing you can do to help with that is you can either bring in another character to keep your character's sight on track, or we can just simply we can go to create polygon primitives. We can make like a cube and size it up. And just say, well, this is my character's focal point, aiming toward. So I can just always check, make sure I don't twist too far one way. I can make a layer out of that so I don't accidentally select it, but I'm not going to accidentally select it because I have my mesh turned off. My cup is kind of color coordinated with something that's blue that I'm not wearing. Just a quick aside. Does anybody remember what this is? Anyone at all? No? I have another one. This is the test. We talk about this all the time. I'll let you think on it. Samuel, it's oh hey, I do have guitars in the wall. Guitar pick is a good answer, but it's wrong. Kirsty Graham, would you like to answer this question? I know you know the answer. I mean, it is a guitar pick, but the proper name of it Okay. So here's my first pose. It's pretty good. It's dynamic, I guess. Dynamic enough. I'll lift that heel off the ground. So that's my frame 1 and 24. Good. Now, banjo pick. It's a, Kirsty, you're right. It is a plectrum. Plectrum is the proper term. This will be on the final exam. So now I'm going to go just 4 frames ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to make my B pose. This is my A pose. Now I'm going to make my B pose. And I'm going to juxtapose it with my A pose. So again, this is my my C shape going this way. Now I'm going to go for my other direction. Is it a C shape if it's backwards? I always get stuck on that. Or do you call it a reverse C shape? Professional plastic string whacker. I put that on my LinkedIn page. Oh, okay. So frame 5. Next pose. Start with the COG. The COG is very important because, as we know, where it goes, everything follows. You guys are going for it. Gonna smack that thing. So because I have this tilt to the chest, I'm going to tilt it the opposite direction and forward and forward and twist. This leg's forward, so twist my hips like so. Then I'll take this little middle thing and I'll drag it over. So far, so good. I need to adjust my weight a bit. Get the weight over this leg a bit more. I'm going to drag this foot forward a little bit. Bring that heel down. This back foot's going to pivot, swivel. Let's see. Swivel heel. I don't like the swivel heel because it keeps the toe stuck. It doesn't swivel on the... What about swivel toe? Yeah, that just swivels the toe. Swivel foot. Oh, yeah, that's... I'm going to raise the heel. When I raise the heel, I notice like I get a little bit more. I can actually go even further forward. Yes! Now let's just take this hand across. I'm going to zero out. We need to get this shoulder. Oh, clavicle. That's better. Somebody's got smacked. I'm going to place this arm well back. Okay. I think that's right. Looks like he's coming. Yep. He missed target. That's okay. I don't need that anymore because now I have those 2 poses. Okay. So now make sure that everything is keyed here. Make sure that my pose is as dynamic as I can possibly get. That's even more dynamic. 10% more dynamic. I'm looking for. Oh yeah, yeah. As always, a visit by Porcelain $3 Santa season. Now, now I have two poses. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to get into this pose. It's going to be really, really fast. So obviously, every frame is going to matter. I think it's important, no matter how quick my animation is moving. Every frame matters. One philosophy that I think is interesting that I never really understood until I got deeper into this stuff is that every single frame is a pose. Well, regardless of good morning, Sarah. Regardless, it's early for you. Regardless on whether or not you put a keyframe on it, it's still a pose. Every frame's a pose, and every pose you are responsible for. And I think there's for some of us, and I was in this camp for a while. I thought, well, there's just some passing poses, and there's no such thing as a passing pose. That just sort of, I just had this idea that some poses were more important than others, and that is false. So it's important to know that every frame is a pose, and every frame you are responsible for. That doesn't mean that you need a key on every single. Well, some animators animate in Maya, which is interesting, but you do have to make sure that you do have to scrutinize your. Every frame is as good as. So now I'm going to. I want this to hold. I want to have a hold on this. I feel like that elbow is kind of. And I'll likely adjust this stuff. Now I want to hold. So I'm going to select my entire rig again, and I'm going to hold down middle mouse, and I'm going to drag this out frame here. So now I have a hold, and if I go into my graph editor, you will see that this curve here, it's plateaued. There's no movement. I know I don't want that. I'm going to want a little bit of cushion here. So I'm going to delete frame 5 because it's identical to frame 12. And now I have two poses, frame 1 and frame 12. And then I have Maya is interpolating between those two poses, which I'm going to fix up in a minute. But first, what I want to do is I want to get a pose that's favoring frame 12, but I don't want it to be exactly frame 12. Then I'll go back to frame 10. So frame 10 is a pose that is favoring frame 12. It's got a little bit of the ingredients of frame 1, but it's favoring frame 12. I'm going to key that, drag that over. So now I have a cushion. Next, I want to have, I want to get back into my Fatima Addy says, hey, Mark, I was wondering whether you get references by videotaping yourself usually or find more using a site online that you could recommend. I typically like, I like to control the reference, so I like to get it myself. Although, there's lots of great references out there. I mean, the internet is full of it. So when I find something, I'll bookmark it. I don't sites references well for any. I use Rhino House. They have good references for people. But they have great references for creatures. So rhinohouse.com is a great site for. I think it costs like $5. Worth it. On that, a good friend of mine and a fellow animator by the name of Eric Burnett. Just type his name in here. I'm gonna give him a look. He just posted a. I think this is how you spell it. He just posted a video collection of his references, and he's really good. He shoots really, really great reference. As does there's an animator at Blue Sky named Jeff Gabor, and he's also pretty renowned for his his references. He's got a bunch of stuff out there. So if you um, do a search for those two, you'll probably find some. And there's all kinds of great references online. And but I like to, how I usually work with references is I will shoot a bunch and then I'll watch it, and it's never what you think it's going to be, but it's just starts the thought process. So a couple things that I do, when I'm shooting references, I set up my camera so I can't see myself on the screen. I see a lot of reference from people that can see themselves and they're doing this, as doing their thing, they're turning their head to the screen and keep watching themselves. I also see a lot of reference that's just facing the camera and doing this, which is, that's nothing. That doesn't tell me anything about the character, so stay away from that. But when I'm shooting my reference, I make sure I can't see myself because that's too distracting. I also make sure that I have a focal point, the same way I do with my animation here. So I'll do something like I'll take a pair of glasses and I'll set them up on the shelf, and so that I have something to focus on, whether it's an action, whether it's a dialogue, any stick into it. And then I shoot it, and I shoot it a bunch of ways. Up, sitting down. I tried all sorts of different stuff, and then I watch it. Long process, and it needs to be a long process because without reference, you don't really have anything. I liken it to, like, if you're going to build a, let's say you're going to construct a table, build a table, and you can either plan it out, draw it out, measure it out, and get it all done on paper, and then buy it, or you can just buy a bunch of wood, start cut it, stick it together. I've done it both ways. Results are drastically different. Same thing with animating. Planning, and so then I'll take my time shooting my reference, and then I'll stitch it together. I like the beginning of this take, and I like the end of this take, and I'll stitch them together, Premiere or something like that, and then I'll go in and start blocking out my animation. Well, what frequently happens, depending on the complexity of the shot, or the character, or what I'm trying to hit, what will happen is, as I start to work on it, I'll come upon, because it's nothing that lives in here can expand. So as you start to go through the motions of animating, your idea expands, and so a lot of times I'll be surprised by what's. I'll get a new idea, or not a new idea, but my idea will back and shoot more. And then I'll make frequent trips to reference, because maybe my reference, now I'm starting to figure out what I want to do with the shoulders. Perhaps my reference doesn't really capture that. I can't really see it. So I'll find myself going back, like, what am I doing with those shoulders? And I'll just exaggerate I'll be doing the same stuff. I'll just be exaggerating it to go like, oh, or stuff. I was with an animator one time, and I was looking at his work, and I was a little confused by some of the poses. And I said, what's going on there? And he said, well, when I stand up, I want to lift my leg up. And I said, yeah, but you're lifting the left leg up in your animation, but when you show me what you're doing, you're lifting your right leg. And he goes, no, I'm not. I'm like, yeah, you are. That's your right leg. And he's like, no, it's not. And I go, listen, let's not argue about it. Go shoot it, and then come back, and then let's look at the reference. Because we misread our bodies. We just really do. He goes, this is, and so he went and shot it. He came back, and he's because what your mind thinks you're doing and what you're physically doing. I mean, I think all of us have seen ourselves on camera at some point. Have you ever been watching a video or something, and you're like, oh God, I didn't know I looked like that. But anyway, that's why reference is good. And on that note, it takes practice, because when you first shoot reference, we get distracted by the fact that it's us. Every time I shoot reference of somebody else and they see it, everybody says the same thing. And that same thing is, I got to go back to the gym. Everybody's really self-deprecating when they. I've never heard anybody like that I've shot reference for, because I'll use other people for, and on who they are, and big people for big people and little people. I mean, I'm not a big man. I'm 5'7", 160 pounds. So I'm gonna do like a troll. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not the guy. And there's just certain people who have certain sensitivities. My character that I will direct other people perfectly fine. Just reference any way you can get it, best way you. Just there to answer questions. Do a blueprint on your design. All right. Speaking of which, I have no reference for task. I mean, kind of I do because I've done this a lot, but kind of I don't. Okay, so now, where was I? So I want to get right now. If we watch this, we have our A pose, and then we have a hold, and then we take like 8 or what is it? What is this? 12 frames to get back to our A pose. That's too slow. So I want to get back to our A pose by frame 16. So what I'm going to do again, I want to have a little bit of cushion. I could just copy 24 over to 60. But that again doesn't give me any cushion. I want to get some cushion in there. And so again, I'll go to frame 22. See that because that's a pose that favors 24. Drag it over to 60. Now you can see smack. Got these nice little cushions. Now I don't have 24 frames of animation. I have 4 frames of animation and animation. So now I have 2 animation assignments that are 4 frames each. This is kind of these holds here. They're kind of a buffer area where I can offset because I don't want everything to land on frame 5, but I have this gap here that I can offset things. And I know at 12 on frame 12, I'm not offsetting anything. It's like a bookmark where nothing can sort of move it where it is. So how do we do this? Well, let's just do a straight in between on frame 3. Here we are. So frame 3, what I want to do is I want to get some drag. So I will pull the COG back a little bit. I'm going to lock this foot down, copying over from. I'll drop the heel. Fine, when I get the feet sorted out, everything sort of into place for me. I don't know why it is. I'm just looking for information. Bend out that arm. Bend it back, well back. I use the period and comma keys to jump between keys, not poses. I am jumping between poses, but most of what I'm doing. Get some drag. Get this back. Get a push out the side here. I want to be in object mode with my manipulator. Sorry. Sometimes it's hard to think. That's why I never ever do both. Like this. Head back. Again, I just like to push this stuff, and it's happening so quickly that you can really get away with. Just thinking about the path of action of that. That elbow. Kind of Hey, Mark, glad to see you're getting people like me excited about animation. Oh, the fires are no fun. We get a lot of wildfires up here in Northern California. But but we were already staying indoors, I guess. Didn't have to evacuate, which was good. Tough time. Now we got this, that little bit of drag. Ooh, I like it. I like it. But I still want to have, still one of the best teachers I've ever had. Woo! I'm sorry. that does not speak well of your education process this far, but I do appreciate the do appreciate the kind words. So you see, like little things, like see how that foot like holds for a bit and then juts forward. That's what's known as texture in your timing. So not everything's moving at the same time. So I want to add a little bit of that, a little bit more of that in this smack. So what I'm going to do is I'm treating this movement like it's a weed principle, so tail. So I'm awesome Black Hall VFX. Nice. Congratulations. So I'm looking at the top of the body and the arm specifically as the tip of the tail. Get my overlap. Always, whenever I'm setting up my poses, shooting my reference, whatever I'm doing, I am ultimately looking for I'm looking for a compelling performance, but from a pure physicality of my character, I'm looking for opportunities to add overlapping action, because overlapping action just makes everything look better. So I'm going to, with that in mind, I'm going to select the upper body. In fact, the arms. Their arms are going to be distracting. I could hide the legs too. In fact, let's hide that neck and head. What's that? I got this. That's actually quite helpful. So now I can just select the body and really think about what I want it to do, and I'm just going to offset it by a single frame. I don't want it moving too much after we get settled here. I do want a little bit of movement. See how it really just softens half a bit. Get a bit more drag through here. And you can see it in the graph editor what's actually happening with the curves, and so you can tell if your curves are going in the right direction. I know that my my rotation Y twists, so keep that twisted a little bit. And then it's just going to give it a bit more snap. See that? I set up, I may have shown you this before, but I don't use a lot of hotkeys. But if I go to my Windows settings, preferences, hotkey editor, one of the hotkeys I do like to use, menu items. I go to playback and I set up my playblast window, the number 0. So if my scene file gets too heavy and I just want to see how it's working in real time, I just hit the have you done the Rent a Mentor program for people much? Yes, I do the Rent a Mentor program quite a bit here at CG Spectrum. The Animbot, I don't actually use it, and I think there's been a few people who've asked me about it. I have dabbled with it. I keep meaning to look into it more because it keeps coming up on my radar, and because I spent a good deal of time working in animation studios like Sony, they have all their proprietary stuff in there, and I'm very my approach is pretty basic. I'm not like I don't like to add in anything other than just the super basic stuff because it can get distracting. And I like to animate fast, and I like well, as we all do. So I'm a bit of a curmudgeon when it comes to certain tools because I just one thing I love about animating in Maya is that the tool set is so small, and I like the fact that it's a small tool set and that I can do a lot with it. So a couple of things that I like, and I think the Animbot has this thing. Um, Samuel, that's a great question. Um, I like the tween machine. I think is good, but this is the tween machine is basically what I do when I'm um, you know, favoring a key and then slide that key around. That's basically like I like to call it the poor man's tween machine. But um, I will dig into the Animbot for sure. Keep hearing more about it. Samuel asks, don't you think it gets confusing offsetting keys before polishing stage? Yeah, totally I do. But here's the thing. This is a really great question. So let's bring everything back. One of the methods that I use to keep control of my animation, which is one of the hardest things about this whole thing, is keeping control of your animation. I typically dress in layers because I'm old and cold, and as I get frustrated, I get hot, and so I start to take off layers of clothing. And I always have had this joke. Anybody who's ever worked with me in the studio knows that my animation has gone off the rails because I'm naked. And so as soon as that last piece of clothing comes off, I know I probably need to delete keys and start again. So what I do is I have these sections. So I've learned to sort of compartmentalize my animation. So I've compartmentalized it in these two sections. And again, that's why frame 12 is so important, because it protects everything beyond it. So this is sort of like 12 frames of a playground here. So if I'm animating and I start to get lost because I've offset keys in my timeline is important when I'm first blocking out and getting my timing set up. Then as soon as I start to straight ahead my animation, my timeline becomes unusable anymore. Lousy with keys. But if I get stuck, then I can just do this. Delete all my in-betweens. Back to frame 10. Favorites frame. And start again, which is not a problem. Do that stuff all the time. And, you know, I can work fairly quickly, so I'm not afraid to just delete it if it's just rails. I just always have to remind myself, because as you start to offset keys, and you're absolutely right, it can get confusing. And as we start to offset keys, we start to forget what the hell the point was in the first place. And so sometimes I have to just sort of slow down and go, okay, the whole idea here is to set up two poses and get in between those two poses cleanly, simply, and elegantly as possible. So my in-betweening phase, I'm not building character, I'm not telling story, I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm adding some detail, sure. Mostly what I'm doing is just setting up drag and just enhancing movement. So this first bit of animation that I'm doing here, the first step in the process, is what we would call pose-to-pose animation. You remember, some of you might not remember, some of you probably do, but back in the 1930s, our friends at Disney they were developing all these workflow methods for animation, and they came up at the time with two sort of basic workflow strategies. One is called, write it out. I'm going to write with a mouse. See how well I do. I'm left-handed, but I'm mousing with my right hand and writing. Well, printing. Very fuzzy letters. Pose to pose. Yeah. Which is what I did to begin with, is just set up a series of poses, blocked it out. That's called pose to pose animation. Now I could continue with that process. But then, so they started with this pose to pose bit of, process of animation, and then go in and they just keep like blocking out poses until they filled it all in and they had a piece of animation done. And they were animated on twos, remember? back in the day. They were these animators that were, it was all hand drawn stuff, and they're animated on twos, and so every two frames there's a drawing, a lot of drawings, 12 drawings per second. What they found with pose to pose was that the animation kind of came out sort of stiff and a dull, and so I use the analogy of, like, say we're going on a road trip, and I say, hey, Samuel, we're going to go on a road trip. You and I are going to drive to, I live in Chicago. We're going to drive to Seattle for 12 hours, 10 hours. And you go, that's great. What are we going to do? And I said, I'm going to pick you up at 8:58, not a minute before, not a minute after. This is the path. We are not ever going to deviate from this path. We are going to get to Seattle by 6:58 on the nose. And I have it all planned out. You say, oh, that sounds great. Get in the car, and we drive, and sure enough, everything goes off without a hitch. End up in Seattle, and somebody says, hey, Samuel, how was your trip? And you would say, well, it was effective and successful in that we made it on time and we were organized, but not very memorable. So, to further that analogy, they came up with another sort of process, which is called, you might remember this, great. Good practice. For what, I don't know. Straight ahead. And what straight ahead animation is exactly what it sounds like. You set a pose, go to another piece of paper, you draw. Another piece of paper, you draw. And you're just going straight ahead. You're not blocking it out. So to use my travel analogy, I say, hey, Samuel, let's go on a road trip. And you say, okay, when are we leaving? I'm like, I don't know. I'll pick you up sometime between 9 and 12. And you go, all right, where are we going? I say, we're going to Seattle. Well, how are we going to get there? I don't know. And so I come and pick you up at like 10:45, get in the car, and we start driving. And we're driving, and suddenly we're lost. Oh, this sucks. And we end up in Seattle 2 days later, and somebody says, hey, how was the trip? And you say, it was insanely frustrating, scary, unorganized, but we like found this crazy waterfall, and we met these people in this like trailer park that helped us get back on track. Like, it was super memorable, but dysfunctional. Like, if I had something to do in Seattle, I would have not been able to. It was dysfunctional but memorable. And so with straight ahead animation, that's typically what would happen is an animator would go straight ahead, and by the time they get to the end of their animation, they just have a mess. But they would have some moments in that animation that were really delicious, really, really great, that they couldn't have come up with any other way other than just accessing the right side of their brain and just getting freaky with it. So what they learned was best approach was a hybrid. So what we do now is we start off with blocking out our animation. So we know basically where we're going. So we're saying, this is where we're starting, this is where we're ending. So we have an in and out point. Then in the middle, we can go off the map. We can just kind of explore. And sometimes when we do that, we have to go back in and we'll have to change our destination a little bit, because in here we come up with a different idea. We got to change our destination slightly. Happens all the time. Fine. It's better for it. But if I didn't have this pose and I just started here and I just started going straight ahead and I start bending stuff, I won't know where I'm moving into, and it's just going to get super sloppy, and I'm not going to have it. I'll have some cool in between poses for sure, but I'm not going to really have much to end with. So to answer your question, Samuel, yes, it gets confusing, but that's why I keep it to these small little sections. So you'll notice, like when I spline and when I start offsetting keys, I'm not doing the whole thing. And when I have a larger assignment, when I have like a 200 frame piece of animation, piece of dialogue or something, that's broken up into these little sections. If I got 200 frames of animation, what probably more likely what I have is 20 little 10 frame pieces. And I squeeze in my timeline, work on that section. polish anymore. Not spending too much time on any individual section, because every once in a while you got to jump out and look at the big picture. And if you spend a bunch of time finessing something, only to see like, oh, that doesn't actually work, and then you got to dive in and kill it all again. So I do base pass, a little bit of polish, and look at it, and go, and then, but if you spline, I find if I spline the entire 200 frames and just look at it, there's things broken all over the damn place, and I'm getting distracted by all kinds of stuff, and I go over here and fix some stuff, and over here and fix some stuff, and I'm just wasting my time getting stressed out. So I spline small sections. I don't even spline at all. I'll just spline a small section, work on that small section, then I'll back again, you know, fight with my brains and not get distracted by pop. Doesn't matter, and then focus on the next section. Yeah, I'm glad you like my analogy. I hope that makes sense. How do you jump into next frame by hotkey? Oh, so that's a great question. So I mean, I use the period and the comma keys to jump between keys, but to go frame by frame, you can hold down, like, I think it's Alt and period and comma key, I think, but that's like a 2-button thing. I never like that. So what I do is I go into again, Windows, settings, preferences, hotkey editor. There it is, and I choose menu items in my categories, and I go back down here to animation playback, or yeah, I think it's playback. There it is. Next frame and previous frame, I just set it as right and left arrow button. And that's what I use to go frame by frame. Like so. Oops. Yeah. Right. Okay, so now I'm going straight ahead through here. So fun. And I'll set a lot of keys, especially for this arm, which I'm going to shift select the entire arm chain, which is 4 controllers. And you're welcome. And I like to, as you can see, I have all these custom, I don't even know, scripts. With all these selected, I can go in here to create sets. I like to create quick selection sets, and I'll just call this arm, the right arm, and I can add it to the show. And that way I can just select it, and there it is. I'll move that out to frame 7. I might not want that, but I'll do it anyhow. Ooh, I do like it. Now, I'm going to go through and carry on. I overlap. Oh, didn't drag that out. Take this. Bring this back. Now I'm going to, for my arm, and I do this for lots of stuff. I can do it for my COG as well, but I'm gonna incorporate a editable motion trail. But I got distracted there for a second, because what I haven't done yet, needed to do, or what I need to do, is I need to make sure that my COG is doing exactly what I need it to do, because all this work of the chest drag and clean up the arm and all this stuff is all for naught if my COG isn't where I need it to be. So I got a little bit off track. So let's get back on track and select my character node. I'm going to hide my arms. I'm going to hide my neck and head. I'm going to hide my torso. I'm going to hide my leg. Just want to see these things. Seems good, but, and of course, it's risky to do this kind of stuff without the torso, because once I bring whatever I'm doing here is just going to cascade or amplify, I should say, by the time it gets up. top. So now, like if I go in here and bring the torso back, that's probably looking like, oh, it looks kind of good actually. And so if I select this COG, I'm going to select visualize and I'm going to select create editable motion trail. Then I have to make sure that motion trails are turned on in my show menu, and they are, and that's my motion trail. Pretty linear, might not be a bad idea. Me to go in the middle here again. Give a little bit of a dip down. Just to give it a bit more of an elegant path of action. Whenever my character is changing direction, one of the first things I do is I just drop them down. I sort of see character animation as waltzes. Characters are sort of just waltzing. Not always, but it works a lot. Certainly it would work here coming back. Okay. I'm getting distracted again. See what happens? So now I like what my COG is doing. So these motion trails can be really heavy. They can really bog down your scene file. So I don't keep them around. I get rid of them as soon as I can, or as soon as I don't need them. So now I think my torso looks pretty good. I'll get a little bit of detail because I've dragged the top of my torso. I've added some overlap and some drag, and I've settled it 2 frames later. I need to match that with my pelvis because they work together. So whatever that's doing, this has to kind of do the same. So as we're starting to come forward, pull that up. Really I love to feel this compression through here and a stretch on the other side. That feels really nice. Probably okay. And I really should have the legs visible for this because where the legs go, or sorry, where the hips go, the legs follow. Cool. Now, arms. Now I can bring back the arms. I can even just bring back one at a time so they don't distract me. And now I'll select the wrists and I will go to visualize editable motion trail. I can see what that wrist is doing. Although, before I do that, I'm going to drag my timeline in. It's confusing that it does the whole circle. It's interesting because I do want at one point to see how it does the whole circle because ultimately I'd like to have a nice figure 8 through. Always looking for figure 8s whenever I can get them. They're just a really appealing shape. And if I can have any of my extremities making a figure 8 as I go, then yeah, I'm going to do that because it's really, really not the only shape I use. Good one. But first I'm going to drag my timeline in, frame 12. And here's something that's kind of interesting. If I were to take my entire arm chain here, and I was to wipe everything out, except for my 2 poses. And then I was to select the wrist and throw a motion trail on it. That motion trail is going to reveal any problems that I might be having in my COG or the rest of my. So there's been many times where I've gone through to clean up the arm. I've had to really fight with it, get it into the right position on certain frames. And if I find myself setting on something that's fairly broad, it's fairly simple. If I find myself setting a lot of keys and struggling with it, that's a clear sign that there's something broken in my COG or my chest. And at that point, if I'm not able to get the path of action of the nose, say, or the wrist, or something that's out on the extremities of your character, then I'm gonna go back and see what's happening from the root up. And the easiest way to do that kind of stuff is just to find your two poses again and delete everything in them, and just see like how Maya interpolates it. And Maya is not going to interpolate well, but it will interpolate it honestly and be able to see if these two poses even work together. Oftentimes, I've been in between two poses, and they're just not compatible. But I didn't recognize it straight away because I was in a rush, or I hopefully whatever. So I've just gone ahead and got too far ahead, and only to realize later on that I've got to tweak these poses because you can't really get there. Sometimes you won't notice that until you're digging into the. So I like to do this just to see like, well, what's actually happening here, and does this seem okay? The fact that we go up a little bit is a little funky. I just want to go in and see the thing about this wrist is that it's being influenced by all kinds of stuff, right? Being influenced by the COG, being influenced by the chest, being influenced by these four controllers. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 controllers that are controlling, well, 5, I guess, because the wrist isn't really. Just a quick side note, I prefer to animate typically with IK arms because it's not influenced. I'm translating it from the wrist. Where I put that position of the wrist is where that position, regardless of what the wrist. I like to have that autonomy. I don't like to have to fight through 5 or 6 different controllers, figure out where I want my wrist to go, because by that time, be a little late. But it's I do agree that it took me a while to get used to working with IK arms, but once I did, I rarely look back. I put something like this. But the path of action of this looks really good. I find it a little odd that we go a bit right there, but I guess that's just dip down and come. That makes sense. Okay. The other thing I could have done, instead of deleting all those keys that I had, is I could have. I'll show you. I didn't want to delete all that stuff that I had done, but I did want to check to see if, without animation, what all this stuff would look like. Then I could have just gone in here and quickly, and I do this a lot actually, mute them. Mute these keys. So they're there still. And you got to mute them on the frame that you want the arm to be, position that you want the arm to be. And then you mute them all, and it's the same process, the same result as deleting them, but you get to keep them. So that's a nifty little tool. Now, go back, and now I'm going to select the wrist again, and I'm going to throw up one of these motion trails on that wrist. Oh, and I love it. So, shoulder, go, get ready, drop a key down on frame 3. Why I didn't have a key there is beyond me. I'm going to get a nice, it's going to come from a low position. bit linear, isn't it? Really like this one. Really like that. I like that the shoulders pull the arm up. You know what I mean? Like it's a sort of like he's what is that thing that the hammer thrower or something? It's like he's throwing something super heavy, so his shoulder pulls up, and then it sort of flings the arm around. Quite fun. It's a bit of overlapping action within the arm itself. That hand is distracting. Now the trick is, what's my spacing like? You see a big jump there, then the spacing gets real tight right there. Kind of a big jump over here. So I need to figure that spacing. So blowing out, all of a sudden, boom, and then not a big jump. So I need to even that spacing out a bit by dragging this arm back. There, because I want that spacing to get progressively bigger. So this distance between these two frames is a little smaller than this distance. Not that much smaller, but a little smaller. This one's going to get a bit tricky, so I'm going to bring that shoulder in because I still want to take the elbow out. Still want to just get that whip. So now we're going to have a bit of a problem. That spacing. Oh no, I guess it's probably fine. I was worried that this spacing was going to be too. Seems okay. The elbow, let's take that to frame 8 so we can 6. Something like that. I'm going to select the shoulder, go to frame 8, and then go and key it, and then go back to 7. Just hopefully that doesn't slow it down too much. Kind of it does. That. So, fair enough. Complete 7. Bring this back. Keep it super fast. And then, of course, we can get a little overlap with the wrist as well. Key it on frame 8. And then we'll just go straight ahead. With the wrist, I hit the Euler filter often when I'm working with it because of, well, you know, below. I think I got into it. Nope, we're good. But just a little bit of overlap with the wrist. Throw a little bit of motion blur. Wow, let's throw a little more. Even read. Come on. If I go into the renderer, I can go into my viewport 2.0 settings and go down here to motion blur. Get up. Doesn't seem to be showing. All right. Well, forget it then. We don't want to see motion blur. Maybe it's because I got that pesky. Motion trail. Okay, next, I'm going to unearth the other arm and we can see here we don't have many keys on. So let's grab fact. Oops. Curse the person who put play blast on the same menu as delete, because I play blast way more than I should when I'm just trying to delete keys. Window, sorry, visualize, let's throw a motion trail on this wrist. It's doing. That seems okay. Nothing troubling there. Kind of sets up at the end there a little bit. Bring that elbow up somewhat. That kind of cleans that up a little. Okay. So I don't want to do much with it. I'm going to offset the elbow by a frame. Back to frame. But I want to keep that really simple. I don't want to be distracted by it. Okay. Now, the neck and head. This one's kind of fun because you can just kind of be goofy with it if you want to, because you won't really notice it. You'll know, but your viewing audience may not. I select them together. Walk through. So this looks good, but we gives ourselves an extra frame there. And then I'll go in the middle and I'll grab the head back, neck way back. I'll also whoa. Oops. I have to keep my translations. Ring. So much fun. Look at that bobblehead. How do you like that? Ching. Who doesn't want to play that video game? Am I right? Woo! Woo! Slap happy, huh? That's the head who he's slapping. That's what the head should do. Person on the other end. This pose is all munched. Fix that pose. I don't care for it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I love it. Love it. Look. Man. Now there's a 12 frames of animation that I would run away to Cancun with right there. Right, now I gotta get back. Move my timeline. 12 frames. 12 frames. Who can't animate 12 frames? Nobody. Nobody can animate 12 frames. You guys, when's the last time you smelled Play-Doh? It really has a memory jog. Ooh. Suddenly have a hankering for animal crackers and orange juice. Does anybody have any questions so far? Play-Doh related? Now, I need to get back. So, again, starting with the COG, we've already put a little dip into his back and up, back and forward. I also want to give him a little bit of drag this way. As that's happening. Keep with my loose neck motif. Lock this foot down again. Pop it over from frame 12 to frame 14. Let's keep going with this whole straight ahead business. I'm not gonna hide anything. I'm not hiding anything. Not arms, not legs, not nothing. Oh, yeah. And I'm going to offset that. Or am I? Oh, I have to see. I want to do that. Hold on. Palm down, pulley blank. Stop. Now, I think I like what's going on with my. Let's get this arm straight aheaded. With our friend, the Motion Trail. Oh, yeah. I'm going to offset it by a frame. Uh-oh. Got the spinning ball. This is what motion trails can do to you. So be careful. Don't do what I've done. You guys know about in the graph editor, if you want to move your keys around, you can select your row of keys. I can go up here to stats, and I can use syntax. In Canada, a sin tax is what they call the taxes on cigarettes and booze. Sin tax, like it's a sin, smoke and drink. Here it's a syntax spelled S-Y-I tax. Don't know the origins. But anyways, we'll go in here and type plus equals 1. So plus equals will move your keys forward. Later timeline. Minus will move them clear. You can do however many frames you want. That's the magic. That so much magic. Oh, gorgeous. It's bloody gorgeous. I love it. Okay. See how I made my outliner is up here in my customs thing? How did I do that? What's going on, Sarah? I got up early to do my interview with CJ, but he had to postpone. Oh, nice. It's never a waste to get up at 4 a.m. I love getting up at 4 a.m. I do it 3 days a week. Old, dark, everybody's asleep. Then you watch the sun come up. Like, I'm not really selling it very well. And then by 7:30 p.m., you're exhausted. Let's get the let's get rid of that. Oh, I think, let's see. I have a Mac. So because as you know, I don't like money. So I just throw it away. That are always disappointing. But there is a way to go. If I want to put a button here, down with my outliner, you can go Windows, hold down Command Shift, click it. Yep. Command Shift or Alt Shift on a PC, and it will, when you click on a button, and it will put that button. Yeah, I can do it again. I'm gonna do it again. Do it with a graph editor. Look at that, I got a graph editor button. Okay. Neck and head going to be offset 2 frames. Here we go. Hold on. Things are about to get totally. Yeah. I'm spitballing. This is what's called animation spitballing. Ooh, that'll be the name of the next Twitch. Animation spitball. Old man Pullyblank. Straight ahead and gonna have a sore neck. Oh, well, that's just ridiculous. What's going on there? That is dumb. Anyway, we'll leave it. And then this arm. Again, just keep it simple. The other arm's doing all the action. The noggin he's got. Look at that head just bouncing around. Can you animate Trump being escorted from the White House? I'm afraid that's beyond my pay grade. I think I could make this guy orange, though. Okay, so now there's something called the... I want to talk... How much time do we got here? Oh, we got a few minutes. So that's A pose, B pose, and getting between those A poses and B poses. And I think it's important to note that for me, for my money, that method is pretty much how I do everything, mostly. That is an animation method of setting up a couple poses, getting between them, poses and holds, poses and holds, getting out of a pose, or sorry, getting out of a hold into another hold. First thing we do is we do an anticipation pose, which is basically the first step of an anticipation pose for me, almost always, not always, but most of the time. But a translation Y, a bit of a vertical translation down, translate into the next hold. As soon as I drop that translation Y down, get all kinds of opportunities just open up. I'm just able to see. That's all really what I'm doing is I'm just I'm basically building a roadmap as I'm driving. Again, travel analogy. So let's go back in time. For our A pose and our B pose. Here we are. A, B, B, A. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the C pose, and I might need to, it's been a while since I've done this, so I might need to expand my timeline maybe to 30 frames, but not any more than that ever. So what the C pose is, it's just an extra pose to kind of give the character kind of a more dynamic quality. They're actually quite cool. They're less basic. So it's kind of like the C pose is basically a hold pose. That's kind of an in between the A and B pose. I'll show you what I mean. So he's going to come forward. He's going to smack, and then I'm going to just get another pose. I'll do it on frame 12, where our character settles back a little bit, upright a little bit. It's just a bit relaxed, not completely. And the C pose, going to be held pose. Okay, so there's our C pose. There's our smack. And then we're going to quickly, I'm going to expand this. See what I mean? Expand this to 30 frames. I'm going to take the end of this whole thing. I'm going to drag it out here. That just gives us a bit more time in here. And then I'm going to go to frame 16, key that, put that on frame 8. We're going to go whack. Nope. Boom, boom. Here's what I'll do. Put that back on frame 12. And then I'm going to key frame 6. I'm going to put that on frame 8. So I'm going to have a little tiny hold before we go into the C pose. Boom, boom. Like so. Take this out to frame 20. So the C pose is just like it's a bit of a recoil hold pose. Almost like our character is stopping to see what they've done before they come back into their anticipation pose. And of course, once we get in and start to in between it, it becomes a bit more dynamic. It doesn't quite so stiff and stale. You can kind of move together a bit. There we go. Click that right arm. I'm going to delete frame 5 and just see how that. They almost blend together. The reason why I put that little hold between 5 and 8 is because if it just went straight in, you'd lose the impact. So I just need a little bit. I need him to stay forward a little bit with that extreme smack pose, just so it reads. Because if he goes like this and then just skips all the way back, that feels more like a kind of a jab, or it almost doesn't read at all. So I need a couple of frames where we, and it's really just the frames in the COG, need a couple of frames where we hold there before we come back. You can see this is pretty much plateaued here. Not much movement. And then we can add a bit of detail in here. There we go. There we go. There we go. A little bit of detail. Little bit of detail. That's what my daddy said. I'm gonna give you a smacking little bit of detail. My father never said anything like that, actually, but I wish he would have. Hey, look at this. This is a picture of my father, actually. Right there. Okay. Look at him. What are you gonna do with that? Anyway. Too many things on this table to distract me. Too many. Anybody have any questions? About my A pose and B pose, C pose. I think it's working out quite nicely. Um, so just a little note about this. This is about as simple as you can get with one of these strikes. Um, again, remember that it has to start with the anticipation pose. Why are you so funny? That's fun. The A pose is always an anticipation pose. Don't go into the anticipation strike; it'll be too slow. Um, that's one of the nicest things that anyone's ever asked me. By the way, the this is like I said, this is about as simple as you can get. They're super fun to do. They're very short, 24 frames, two poses. They're if you're ever kind of like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. If you're ever short on motivation for animating, this is a great exercise for that. Oftentimes people will ask me like, how do you stay motivated? I'm like, well, you don't. Not always. Okay, just don't. But if you, the most important thing you can do as an animator, obviously, is to animate. So it's important to animate. Um, so distracted by the chat. So if you're feeling like a lot of times when we're not motivated to animate, when we don't feel motivated to animate, what the problem is we don't that we're not happy with our result. That's usually what does it for us, is we're just kind of bummed out that our animation is really looking. I do the same thing with music. Um, yeah, you burn out. And I do the same thing with music. It's like sometimes I'll play music for a while and everything just starts to sound the same. No fire way to get me to stop. I think I'm being wrong. Um, so quick little things like this, 24 frames of like some kind of an attack where I can like dig in and like just push it and nobody's watching. It doesn't really matter. Um, uh, it helps because it's an easy sort of win. And I do this kind of stuff all the time. I'll do jump cycles. I'll just do stuff that makes me smile, makes me laugh good about what I can. I'll just take 20, 30, maybe even 40 frames and just knock something out. Not to make something amazing. That's the point. The point is just to reaffirm what I love about this, what I enjoy about the process, and to also show that I can do this. Um, yes, Sarah. Yes, walk away. Another great tip. One of the best. Leave on a high note. So often we quit while we're frustrated, and that makes it so much more. That's a huge hurdle to open up Maya when the last time you down you hated it. It's a huge hurdle to open it. And I know from experience, it is like I hated this very much, very scared, very destitute. Um, and so these are some of the things that I learned that helped me cope with the fact that I knew that the only thing I could do wrong is doesn't matter why I'm what I'm at. Yeah. Um, so these assignments, these jobs, I guess, are just a wonderful way to mojo up. And challenge yourself with props. Just make a cylinder. Throw a cylinder in your character's hands and animate that character a um animate them, jumping and slamming on the ground. That's a good one. Again, you start with the crouch, jump up. Danny, 3D. I thought so. The quadruped was done last week. Here's what we'll do. Try something. Time we have left. How quickly? Well, let me show you this. More of a philosophical workflow thing with the quadruped rather than me animating it. Okay, that's the logo. I'm going to hide my screen so I can dig through my files and not feel naked. There it is. Every winter, my voice drops like mhm, mhm. Thinking. It's always the hard. I didn't even save this scene. Pullyblank. That flippant. Okay, so if we look at this tiger walk, all right, so walk cycle, like any other. Ryan Reynolds, he wishes. Wait, Scott Eade? Son of a gun. Scott Eade is here. He and I went to school together, as a matter of fact. And we worked together in New Zealand on Avatar. Funny. Funny. And the first day of school, he stole my desk. Stole my desk. Excuse me for 1 second. I might have seen somewhere. Hey, back. Sorry about that. So you see, I got all these keys. Yeah, tons and tons of keys. Well, if I bring this back to just my main poses. Hey, neighbor kids. Oops, don't delete those. Here we go. It should, as a cycle, I should be able to play this. And it runs pretty well. Lots of overlap. There's still some polish that needs to happen, but the interesting thing is that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 poses. 8, including this last one, but it's just a copy of the first one. So it's just 7 poses. And so if you're focusing on your poses first and foremost, I'm fully blanking, which is what my students have called deleting. First, if you're concentrating on the poses first and foremost and not the movement, then you can actually get away with a lot of really great stuff with very few poses. No offset keys, nothing fancy. Everything's keyed. The entire character is keyed on all of those poses. 7 poses, Lots of good stuff. Now I can go through and my polish stage isn't fixing. There's a difference between fixing your animation and polishing your animation. Unfortunately, those two get confused sometimes. Dig in, we start to polish our animation, and we end up trying to fix stuff. Should probably not. We're wasting our time. So if you're focusing on your poses first and foremost and making sure those poses work together, and this didn't happen like overnight. I mean, process figuring out what and working on it, rubbing it, nope, using lots of reference, that sort of thing. But the point is that you don't need a crap ton of keys overlap and mixing the mechanic if you're focused on the poses. Yeah. Oh, what a lovely way to spend a Friday morning. Super fun. Does anybody have any questions? Final words? Remember, this is a plectrum, and this is pink. All right, so I'll be signing off in about 3 minutes. What are we doing next week? Anybody have any requests? A dialogue piece. God, Eid, you son of a gun, sneaking in here like that. Lovely to see. Lovely to see. Sarah, thank you for getting up at 4 a.m. just to. Oh, Velociraptor. Yeah, I could do that. Have I ever eaten Vegemite? Yeah, I love Vegemite. Salty, it's a salty dish, isn't it? Yeah, I dig it. Vegemite on toast. Love it. When I was growing up in Red Deer, I had a friend who was from the UK, and he. Oh, flight cycle. Now you're pushing me to the earth. I don't know if I'll be able to do a flight cycle. Looks like creatures are always. All right. Well, have a wonderful weekend, everyone. It is a COVID kind of weekend. Have an excellent weekend. Thank you all for. It's good to see you, Kirsty. Thank you for coming in. Thanks everyone for being here. Same time next week. I hope to see you all again. All right. That's it. Bye bye.